With every presentation I will commence with the following. Ethics is not there to judge people, but to judge the actions of people, whether they are right or wrong. Ethics tells us what to do, what not to do, and what choices to make. We have to understand choices, actions, and motives. Motives drive choices and actions. And for every action there is always an equal and opposite reaction from those choices. Now if a motive justifies an action for one, then it justifies the same action for anyone employing that motive, or otherwise one would be inconsistent and incongruent with one's principle. Now we have to differentiate legal and ethical. These terms are not the same. What may be legal may not be necessarily ethical, and in some parts of the world, what may be ethical may not be legal. Now we have to distinguish relative ethics from absolute ethics. Relative ethics come from man, because these ethics change with place and location. All theories of ethics fall short from absolute ethics of nature, which are based in harmony and coherence. These natural laws can only be discovered and not be created. These ethics never change, with time and location. What is ethical in one place is ethical at all places, irrespective of location. And what is ethical at one point in time, is ethical at all points in time, irrespective of time difference. Now I do not discuss any topics based on these relative ethics of man. If I do fall under one of these following ethical codes in some instances, then it has been coincidental or that ethics is in agreement with the natural laws. Is it ethical to use a company's resources for personal use? Unless there is a policy that allows employees to use a company's resources for personal use, then the employee is not acting in the best interest of the company, as this is creating some cost to the company based on the personal use of the company's resources. This unauthorized usage amounts to nothing more than common theft, if there is no authorization from the company to allow employees to use company's resources for their personal use. This is an ethical practice and conduct from the employee to start with. What one normally does is justify the usage, by either saying that one should be entitled to be using the company's resources, as one is constantly using them anyway. Or say, I constantly see my coworkers doing it or the boss does it for his or her personal use, so it's good enough for me to use the company's resources too. But that is still unethical, even if others do it. Without the expressed authority and permission from the company for employees to use their resources, then this is ethically incorrect behavior, no matter where you are in the world. Now what if there is an allowance for the managers for using a company's resource and not for the employees in that same company or department? Is that ethically correct policy from the company to start with? No, it is not. It is unethical in practice, because anything that excludes a group of people within the company devalues them as less important or significant in the company. A wise policy would give everyone the same privileges as everyone else in the company, if they are in the same department or functional area. That is ethically correct policy and conduct, anywhere in the world, irrespective of time and location. Now, let's look first at what a company's resources that one could be using for personal use either intentionally or unintentionally, without the company's expressed authorization. Using the company's telephone to make a personal call. If the personal call is within an employee's break period, it still makes no difference. Using the internet for personal use, such as shopping online, checking one's social media, logging into one's email service provider to check one's emails, downloading files, application, or even movies, and so on. Using the company's stationery for personal use, such items as papers, envelopes, stamps, sticky notes, and so on, which is not in line with the company's work, but for one's personal use. Using the company's equipment for personal use, such as photocopiers, printers, faxes, scanners, tablets, laptops, hand tools, sewing machines, or any machines or equipment in the business. Using the company's car for personal use. If the employer allows one to use the vehicle to drive to one's home and back to work, one is going out of the authorization boundaries, in such cases of taking the car for dining out, going shopping with it, using it for going out. Using the company's car for a second job, or for a side hustle that one has on the side. Or even using it for a vacation is just plainly ethically wrong conduct. Even more so, if one expects a reimbursement for cost incurred by using the company's car. Using the company's cell phone for personal use, not in line with the job. Using the company's fridge to store one's groceries while one did their shopping during their lunch break. This is going beyond the normal fair use, the spare time that one has during work, and is employed for personal use. Such as clipping one's nails, putting on makeup, making a phone call from one's cell phone, surfing the internet on one's mobile phone, and so on. This is quite unethical to use a company's time, that one is receiving a salary from, and employ it for one's personal use. If one has some spare time, one can use it to relax during the quiet periods. If the quiet periods are far too long, asking the manager for a break at this point in time would be much better ethically, and then taking that break for a smoke, for a walk, or for checking one's phone, one's email, or making personal phone calls, and so on is much ethically correct conduct and practice. Other not so common unethical practices are using the company's disk storage that one has been allocated for storing personal data, instead of work-related data, such as downloaded materials, or storing music, movies, or personal files. Using the company's business information for one's personal gain, such as using a company's concepts or plans and setting up a business based on that specialized information, or repackaging the business information and reselling as a report, PDF, or newsletter. This is just an ethical business practice to start with, even if the employer is providing a low or inferior product or service in the market and the demand is high. Justifying that the consumer would be much better off is no excuse to act unethically. If one starts a business in a highly unethical way, from that mentioned example, how far do you think one would go in that business? It's only a matter of time for that business to go more and more unethically in its practices. One would need first to resign from the company, then set up a business in that respective market, then that would be ethically correct. Other highly unethical practices would be to rent out the company's equipment without the knowledge of the employer, and collect the proceeds for oneself. This is plain stealing from the employer, and not to mention highly unethical conduct. Other such activities are producing scrap products purposefully, so the employer either gives it away or sells it at massive discounts to their employees. If there are no policies regarding the company's resource use by the employer, and one wants to use their resources, it is good practice to ask the employer for permission for usage, or even advice that one would be willing to pay an acceptable fee for the use for certain resources from the company. That would be much more ethical than assuming that the employer won't mind me using their equipment or resources for one's personal use within the company. One has to see things from the employer's perspective. Imagine if the company had 10 employees, 20 employees, or even more, and everyone was using the company's resources for the year. Done over multiple years, the expenses add up to the company substantially. Now what about employers using the resources from their employees? Yes, it does happen, and that is the resource of time. Employers can be using the employee's time resource without compensating him or her in such instances of, after working hours still spent in the office, work done by the employee at home during their time off, or employees missing out on their break periods in order to catch up on too much work given. Also, kitchen staff room may not have the necessary equipment for eating or drinking, such as coffee machines, vending machines, water dispensers, microwave ovens, fridges, or may not have enough of them, so the employee has to queue up for their turn every time, which takes time from the employee's work break. These instances are unethical practices to have in the workplace from the employer's side in respect to their care for the employee's time resource taken. In the description notes, there is a link for a brief on business ethics. You're welcome to download it. If you want to be informed of more content when it comes out, you can click the subscription and notification button. If you want a specific topic discussed, you can let me know in the comments below.